The year was 1874, a year when the frontier still felt young enough to change a life and old enough to break one. Morning light crept slowly over the ridges of Verde Canyon, spilling across the sandstone cliffs like a quiet blessing. Ron Nyi watched the sunrise from the saddle of his paint gelding, the cold air pinching his skin while the horizon glowed with the promise of another hard day. He preferred these hours, when the world was silent enough that a man could hear his own heart, not the battles he'd survived, not the tribe that turned its back on him, not the soldiers who'd once trusted him to translate but never trusted him to belong. Just wind, stone, sky, and the rhythmic breathing of a horse that didn't care about blood or past mistakes. Ron guided the gelding toward the upper meadow, searching for a missing mare. His eyes, sharp as flint, scanned the brush. He had almost convinced himself the day might pass quietly when a rifle shot shattered the calm, cracking through the canyon like lightning without the storm. His gelding jerked beneath him. Ron went still. A second shot followed, closer, more frantic. Then a scream, not long, not loud, more like a cry swallowed by fear. He didn't hesitate. He dug his heels into the gelding's sides, sending them flying down the narrow trail. Branches slapped his coat, dust rose behind him, and the canyon walls funneled the sound of danger until it felt as if the whole world was echoing with it. He rounded a bend and saw her. A woman crouched behind a fallen log, skirt torn, cheeks streaked with dirt. Her hair, wild, wind-tangled, golden in the morning light, whipped against her face. She held a revolver the wrong way, desperately trying to steady her aim while three armed riders pushed toward her through the wash. Ron swung out of the saddle, lifted his rifle, and fired a warning shot at the canyon wall. The boom ricocheted off the stone, startling the riders and sending chips of rock tumbling. The woman flinched and looked up at him, her blue eyes widening with a mix of hope and disbelief. He jerked his head toward a narrow deer trail climbing between the pines. Go. She hesitated only a second, until another bullet hissed past and bit into the log. That was enough. Ron grabbed her hand, pulling her onto the trail. She ran beside him, stumbling over stones, breathing hard but refusing to slow. They climbed until the gunfire faded into muffled echoes lost in the wind. At a small creek tucked beneath tall pines, Ron finally stopped. The woman collapsed onto a rock, gasping, trying to speak through breaths that shook her entire frame. Who are you? Ron, he said. Don't try to talk yet. She wiped her face with trembling fingers. They were going to kill me. Looked that way. Why did you help me? He shrugged lightly. Didn't feel like watching you die. She stared at him, unsure whether he was mocking her or telling the simple truth. Ron filled his canteen and handed it to her. She drank greedily, water running down her chin. We need to keep moving, he said. They'll search the canyon. You don't even know me, she whispered. Ron met her gaze, steady, unreadable. Don't need to. He led her along the creek until his cabin came into view. A small wooden structure wedged safely between two cliffs. Smoke curled from a narrow chimney, promising warmth. This is your home? She asked softly. As much as any place is. Inside, the cabin was sparse but clean. A stone hearth, a wooden table worn smooth by use. Two hand-carved drums in the corner, relics of a life he rarely spoke about. He offered to start a fire. I can do it, she said, straightening. She tried, failed, tried again, failed harder. Ron finally crouched beside her, guiding her hands. Easy. Fire likes patience, not panic. She scowled at him, but when the flame finally caught, her face lit with stubborn pride. See, she said breathlessly. Told you I could manage. Ron allowed himself the smallest smile. 3 tries and 1 Apache. Good teamwork. She blinked. You're Apache? Half. Silence drifted between them, soft, uncertain, strangely warm. My name is Hannah, she said quietly. Hannah Reeves? Ron handed her a cup of steaming coffee. You got people looking for you? Her eyes dimmed. If I did, I wouldn't be out here alone. He nodded. Then we'll keep you safe until we figure out your trouble. Outside, thunder growled across the canyon. Inside, two strangers warmed their hands at the same fire, unaware that the bond forming between them would change everything. The storm rolled in faster than either of them expected. Rain drummed against the roof in steady sheets, turning the canyon outside into a gray watercolor blur. Inside, the fire crackled warmly, casting flickers of light across Hannah's face. A face still pale from fear, but slowly settling into something softer, something almost peaceful. Ron set a tin cup of stew in front of her. Eat while it's hot. She smelled it cautiously, then took a small sip. Her shoulders dropped, the tension in them loosening as warmth spread through her. It's good, she murmured. It's food, Ron corrected, though his eyes warmed just a little. For a moment, neither spoke. The only sounds were the storm and the fire, steady, grounding things. Hannah seemed to be listening to both, grounding herself too. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? Ron asked. For saving me, for bringing me here, for not asking me to explain everything right away. Ron sat on the opposite side of the small table. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes watched her carefully, like a man who trusted nothing but still wanted to. I'll ask, he said, when you're ready. She nodded, grateful for his patience. Most men she'd known rushed, demanded, pushed. Ron moved like the mountains, slow, calm, unshakable. Her gaze drifted around the cabin. You live here alone? Most times. Do you ever get lonely? He shrugged as if the answer didn't matter. Lonely isn't the worst thing a man can be. She looked at him then. Really looked. His broad shoulders, the quiet strength in his movements, the roughness in his hands, the sadness tucked into the corners of his eyes. A man shaped by both worlds and accepted by neither. You don't talk much, she said softly. Talk never kept anyone alive. And what does? He met her eyes with a calm steadiness, knowing when to listen. The fire popped. Hannah pulled her blanket tighter. She was still trembling slightly, though she tried to hide it. You're safe here, Ron said. I promise. The simplicity of his words wrapped around her like another blanket. She swallowed hard. I believe you. She did, and that frightened her almost as much as the men who'd chased her. After a moment, she asked, How did you know they were after me? Saw fear in your eyes, Ron said, and men like that don't fire warning shots. She shivered at the memory, the way they'd hunted her, their voices, their laughter. The cold certainty that she would have died alone in that canyon if Ron hadn't shown up. You want to tell me why they were chasing you? Ron offered gently. Hannah took a slow breath. I will. Just not yet. My thoughts are tangled, he nodded. Then untangle them here. Storm's not quitting anytime soon. The rain intensified, tapping the roof like a frantic heartbeat. Hannah moved closer to the fire, stretching her hands toward the warmth. Her fingers were still shaking. Ron noticed. Hands hurt? Just cold. He pulled a wool blanket from a shelf and draped it over her shoulders. She startled at the gesture, not because it was unexpected, but because it was kind, gentle. Two things she hadn't felt in far too long. You're shivering, he said. I'm trying not to. Try less. Rest more. He sat beside the hearth, close enough to guard her, but far enough not to crowd her. The rain softened a little, turning into a steady whisper against the cabin. Hannah leaned her head back against the wall and closed her eyes. She hadn't meant to fall asleep, but exhaustion, fear, and warmth conspired together. Her breathing steadied, her body sinking into stillness. Ron watched her for a long moment, her face finally peaceful, her hands loosening their grip on the blanket, the small silver locket resting against her collarbone, rising and falling with each breath. Something in his chest tightened, something he hadn't felt in years. Not desire, not romance, something simpler, deeper, protection, an instinct older than his scars. He stood quietly and moved to the window, checking the trail. The riders hadn't followed. The canyon had swallowed their tracks. For tonight at least, the danger was far away. Behind him, Hannah murmured something in her sleep. A name, maybe, or a memory too heavy to carry awake. Ron didn't wake her. He simply added another log to the fire, sat down in the shadows, and kept watch until the storm finally passed. Outside, the rain eased. Inside, two solitary souls, one wounded, one weary, unknowingly took their first steps toward changing each other's lives. Morning arrived gently, slipping through the cracks of Ron's shuttered windows like gold dust floating in the air. Hannah stirred on the cot, her breathing slow and even. Ron had given her his bed and spent the night on a woven rug by the fire, listening to every shift of the wind, every whisper of the canyon. Old habits didn't die. They simply slept with one eye open. She woke with a small gasp, as if pulled suddenly from a dark dream. Her hand flew to her throat, gripping the silver locket hard enough that her knuckles whitened. Ron lifted his head. Morning. She blinked, confused for a moment by the unfamiliar surroundings. Then memory rushed back, the gunshots, the chase, the storm, the safety of the cabin. And she exhaled shakily. I fell asleep, she murmured, embarrassed. You needed it. Her eyes softened at the quiet certainty in his voice. She pushed the hair from her face and looked around. You stayed by the fire all night? Someone had to keep watch. You didn't have to, she said. Then, after a beat, thank you. Ron simply nodded, as if gratitude was something fragile that might break under too much attention. Hannah rose slowly, stretching stiff muscles. She wandered toward the window, staring out at the gorge where sunlight spilled across the earth in bright ribbons. It's beautiful, she whispered. I haven't seen a morning like this in a long time. Ron poured coffee into two battered tin cups. Most people don't come this far out unless they're running from something. Hannah fell silent. Ron didn't push. He handed her the cup and returned to his chair by the hearth. She held the warm tin between her palms, staring into the steam like she was searching for courage. Finally, she spoke. The men who chased me, they weren't strangers. Ron waited. They worked for a man named Barrett Sloan. Her voice trembled slightly at the name. He owns half the land outside Briar Ridge, and the sheriff's favor. Ron leaned back, arms crossed loosely. What does Sloan want with you? Hannah's fingers brushed the locket again. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside the locket was a tiny drawing, faded at the edges, the face of a young girl, maybe 6 years old, bright eyes, a small smile. This is Lily, Hannah whispered, her voice thickening. My daughter. Ron straightened, surprise flickering in his dark eyes. She's been missing for 2 months. Hannah clutched the locket as if it were the last warm ember of her heart. Barrett Sloan took her. The words fell heavy in the tiny cabin, like stones dropped into deep water. Ron spoke carefully. Why? Because he believes Lily belongs to him, that she's his blood. Tears forced their way to the surface, shimmering but refusing to fall. He was my husband once, for 6 years, a cruel man, controlling, violent. She swallowed hard, steadying herself. I left when Lily was 5. I took her and ran. Ron's jaw tightened. He swore he'd find us. And when he did, her voice broke at last. He sent men to take her while I was working at a sewing house. When I chased after them, they told me I'd never see her again. That Sloane had plans. What kind of plans? Ron asked softly. The kind that turned children into property. Her breath hitched. I went to the sheriff, but he told me Sloane had every right to claim what was his. I begged. I cried. No one cared. So I ran, looking for anyone brave enough to help me, but Sloane's men found me before help did. Until Ron. She met his gaze, eyes bright with grief and determination. I swear I'll get her back, even if I have to walk into Satan's fire myself. Ron leaned forward. His voice was steady, firm, like the ground beneath her feet. You won't be walking into anything alone. Hannah's lips parted, hope flickering but afraid to stay. You don't even know me. You're a mother, Ron replied. That's enough. Silence thickened between them. Not uncomfortable, but full of meaning neither fully understood yet. A hawk cried somewhere above the canyon. Sharp and distant. Hannah wiped her eyes, then straightened her spine as if rediscovering her strength. So, she whispered, what do we do now? Ron stood, took his hat from the wall, and looked out toward the trail. We start by finding where Sloane keeps his men. You mean? Her heartbeat quickened. You'll help me? Ron didn't look back. I don't make promises lightly, Hannah. Then he met her eyes, calm, certain. And I don't leave people behind. Her breath shook, but not from fear this time. From hope. The morning settled fully by the time Ron had gathered his saddle, rifle, and a small pack of provisions. Hannah stood near the doorway, the silver locket clutched in her palm as if the warmth of it could guide her forward. Outside, the canyon glowed with a bright resilience after last night's storm, puddles reflecting the sky like scattered mirrors. Ron cinched the saddle strap and gave the gelding a reassuring pat. We won't ride straight into town, he said. Sloane's men will be watching the roads. Hannah nodded. She understood too well what it meant to be hunted. How far is Briar Ridge from here? Half a day's ride if we take the ridge trail, Ron answered. Longer if we stay concealed. She hesitated, the weight of everything she faced pressing against her chest. I don't want to put you in danger. Ron paused, meeting her eyes. Danger has a way of finding a man whether he waits for it or not. Might as well face it standing. She swallowed, touched by the quiet strength in his words. Ron didn't boast or posture. Still waters rarely did. But there was something in him that felt unbreakable, something she trusted more than she should. As they mounted up, Ron on his gelding, Hannah behind him, she wrapped her arms lightly around his waist. He felt solid, steady, like a wall of warmth that made the world feel less cruel. You hold on tight, Ron murmured, adjusting the reins. She did. The trail wound upward along narrow ledges carved into red rock and pine roots. From there, they could see almost everything, winding creeks, wildflowers swaying in the wind, the distant outline of the town Hannah feared returning to. Ron rode with quiet purpose, scanning every angle, every shadow. Sloane's men aren't train trackers, he said, breaking the silence. But they aren't fools either. If they see us, they'll kill you, Hannah whispered. Let them try. There was no arrogance in his tone, only a calm readiness that sent a strange, unfamiliar comfort through her. They rode for a long while in silence, wind tugging at their clothes, the smell of damp earth rising beneath the hooves of the horse. When they reached a flat overlook, Ron slowed the gelding. Drink, he said, handing her the canteen. She took a sip and passed it back. Her hands shook slightly, fear, exhaustion, or hope she wasn't ready to trust. Ron watched her subtly. Sleep was the first step. Talking was the second. And the third? She asked. Believing we'll get her back. Her breath caught. Do you really think we can? Ron turned in the saddle just enough to meet her gaze. His eyes were dark, steady, unflinching. Yes. No conditions. No hesitations. Just yes. For a moment, the canyon wind softened around them, like the world itself was listening. Hannah looked away, biting her lip. Lily is all I have. She's the only love I've ever been certain of. Ron didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than she'd heard it before. Sometimes life takes things from you. People, places, even pieces of yourself. But if you're lucky, it gives one reason to fight again. And you? She asked softly. What did life take from you? He hesitated. Enough. The conversation drifted off like a leaf carried by wind. Some wounds didn't need daylight to be real. A few hours later, the ridge trail dipped into the thick pines. Ron dismounted and studied fresh hoofprints in the soft earth. 2 riders, he murmured. Light horses, moving fast. Sloane's men? Hannah asked, fear rising. Maybe. Maybe not. He knelt, brushing the prints with his fingertips. They're headed toward Briar Ridge. Hannah shivered. If they see us, they won't. He guided her through a narrow game trail where branches nearly formed a tunnel overhead. Hannah followed closely, her skirts brushing plants that released sweet, earthy scents. When they emerged on the other side, the valley opened wide, and far in the distance, the faint outline of Briar Ridge appeared. Smoke rising from chimneys, the spire of the church catching sunlight, and beyond that, Sloane's sprawling ranch like a wound on the land. Hannah's breath hitched. Her fingers found her locket. Lily, she whispered. Ron stepped beside her. We'll find her. But we can't walk into town yet. What do we do? We start with someone who hates Sloane almost as much as you do. Someone in Briar Ridge? Ron shook his head slowly. No, someone outside it. He motioned toward a thick stand of pines stretching east. Hidden within them was a small homestead, a place he hadn't visited in years, not since he walked away from the people who had once claimed him. Hannah looked at him, worry tugging at her expression. Who lives there? Ron's jaw clenched with something like old pain. My father's brother. Family? Ron didn't look at her. Not exactly. They started toward the homestead. Hannah riding with hope trembling in her chest. Ron riding with ghosts stirring in his heart. The path ahead held no promises, but for the first time in a long while, neither of them walked it alone. The pines thickened as Ron and Hannah rode deeper into the eastern woods. The sunlight dimmed beneath the towering branches, and the air grew cooler, touched by the quiet secrets only old forests carried. Hannah clung a little tighter as the gelding stepped over roots and fallen needles. How much farther? She whispered. Not long, Ron answered, but his voice had changed. It carried a tension she hadn't heard before. Not fear, something older, something heavier. When they broke through the last line of trees, a small homestead appeared. A weathered cabin with smoke curling from its chimney, a pen of goats nearby, and a field where someone had recently turned the soil. The place looked worn but lived in, like hands had shaped it with patience rather than pride. Ron stopped at the edge of the clearing. You okay? Hannah asked softly. Ron didn't answer right away. He stared at the cabin as if it were a memory with a heartbeat. Haven't been here in 10 years. Do you think he'll welcome you? Ron exhaled. I think he'll open the door. Everything after that is a gamble. Before Hannah could respond, the cabin door swung open. A tall, broad-shouldered man stepped out, gray hair pulled into a tie, eyes sharp as river stone. His stance was rigid, wary, the stance of a man who had spent a lifetime watching shadows as closely as he watched people. His gaze locked onto Ron, then narrowed. "Well," the man said, voice gravelly but strong, "if it ain't the ghost that forgot it had a family." Ron didn't flinch. "Hello, Uncle Tony." Hannah blinked. So this was the man Ron dreaded seeing. He looked like a carved piece of the land itself, strong, weathered, unbending. Tani walked closer, eyeing Hannah with equal suspicion. "You bring trouble with you, Ron?" he asked. Ron didn't sugarcoat it. "Yes." Tani snorted. "Least you're honest about it." Hannah stepped forward tentatively. "My name is Hannah. I didn't ask your name," Tani interrupted, though not unkindly. "But I see pain in your eyes. That's reason enough to listen." Hannah swallowed hard. Ron noticed her tremble and stepped subtly closer to her, a quiet gesture of protection. Tani's eyes flicked to Ron. Women with pain. Dangerous things for a man running from himself. Ron's jaw tightened. "We need information." Tani crossed his arms. "And what makes you think I have any to give?" "Because you always knew every man in Briar Ridge," Ron said quietly. "And you know Barrett Sloan." At the sound of Sloan's name, a dark shadow passed across Tani's gaze. "That man is poison wrapped in money." "He took my daughter," Hannah blurted, her voice cracking on the last word. Tani's stern expression softened just a little. He studied her, not with pity, but with the solemn respect of a man who understood grief too intimately. "Sit, both of you." He gestured toward a rough-hewn bench outside the cabin. Ron helped Hannah down from the horse and guided her to the seat, his hand lingering at her elbow a moment longer than necessary. Tani leaned against the railing, arms folded, eyes scanning the tree line as if danger might rise from it like mist. "Tell me." Hannah told him everything. The marriage, the fear, the escape, the sheriff's betrayal, the kidnapping of Lily. Her voice wavered, but she didn't break. Ron watched her with something like awe tightening in his chest. When she finished, Tani let silence settle heavily between them. A long, thoughtful silence. Finally, he said, "Sloan keeps a small holding north of town. Not his main ranch, a hidden place. Few people know it exists." Ron's head lifted. "He's keeping her there?" Tani nodded slowly. "He keeps things he wants hidden there. Things he doesn't want the law sniffing around. Or the church." His gaze darkened. "Or the women he thinks are his to claim." Hannah's breath hitched, her hand flying to her throat. "Lily." Ron placed a hand over hers, steady and sure. She didn't pull away. Tani watched the gesture, a faint glimmer of understanding passing through his eyes. "There's a guard rotation," he continued. "Sloan sends 4 men at a time, mean ones, loyal, bought souls." "Can we get past them?" Hannah whispered. Tani studied Ron with a long, heavy look. "Alone? No." Then he looked at Hannah. "With him? Maybe." Ron straightened, resolve settling into his bones. "Tell me when they switch guard." "Dusk," Tani said. "Every evening." Hannah gripped Ron's hand urgently. "That means Lily will be alone with them tonight." Ron turned to her, voice low but firm. "We're going to get her. Tonight." Her breath trembled, hope and terror tangled together. Tani exhaled deeply. "You'll need help. I'm old, but I can still shoot straighter than most men. And I've waited a long time to settle things with Sloan." Ron looked startled for a moment, then deeply grateful. "Thank you, Uncle." Tani shook his head. "Don't thank me yet. Tonight, things will get bloody." Hannah swallowed hard. "I don't care. I just want my daughter back." Ron squeezed her hand, a promise, silent and strong. And for the first time, Hannah felt the world shift, not away from her, but with her. Tonight, the past would be confronted. Tonight, choices would be made. Tonight, the fight for Lily would begin. The sun sank slowly behind the pines, painting the sky in shades of ember and gold. Each passing minute felt heavier than the last, as though time itself knew what waited in the dark. Hannah stood near the edge of Tani's property, watching the light fade with a trembling breath. Every heartbeat whispered her daughter's name. Ron tightened the cinch on the gelding's saddle. He worked with the careful movements of a man who knew the stakes, who had failed too many times in life to allow another failure now. Tani checked the rifles, his weathered fingers moving with surprising precision for a man his age. "We ride quiet," Tani said. "The woods hide us best. The men won't expect anyone coming through the northern thicket." Ron nodded. "Hannah rides with me until we get close. Then she stays back." "I'm coming in with you," Hannah said, her voice barely above a whisper but sharp with determination. Ron turned to her, calm but resolute. "No. If something happens, something already happened," she cut in, her eyes shining with raw desperation. "My child is in there. I can't just stand behind trees and hope. I need to see her. I need to hold her. I need to bring her home." Her voice cracked on the last word, but she didn't look away. Ron's shoulders softened. He looked at Tani, who only shrugged. "You try telling a mother what she can't do. I ain't fool enough." A faint smile, the first in days, touched Hannah's lips. Ron exhaled slowly. "All right, but you stay behind me, no matter what." "I will," she whispered. When the final streak of orange vanished from the sky, they mounted up. Hannah climbed behind Ron, her fingers curling around his coat for balance. Tani rode a small but sturdy Mustang, its coat as dark as the gathering night. They entered the forest. The world transformed instantly, the air cool and still, the scent of pine thick and grounding. The horses' hooves made almost no sound on the soft, needle-covered earth. Fireflies drifted lazily through the shadows like wandering sparks. Hannah pressed her cheek lightly against Ron's back. "Thank you," she murmured. "For what?" he whispered back. "For not giving up on us." Ron didn't respond, but she felt his breath deepen, steadying itself, maybe for her, maybe for himself. As the moon rose, pale and watchful, they reached the edge of a ravine overlooking a distant ranch house tucked beneath looming sycamores. The structure looked ordinary enough: a long shed, a couple outbuildings, a small cabin. But the lanterns circling the perimeter made it clear this place was anything but innocent. Tani pulled out a small spyglass and scanned the area. "4 guards," he murmured. "2 at the north post, 1 walking the fence, 1 smoking near the shed." "Any sign of Lily?" Hannah whispered, her voice breaking with every syllable. Tani steadied the glass again. "Can't see children from this far, but the shed's got bars on the windows. That's not for livestock." Hannah covered her mouth, stifling a sob. Ron rested his hand gently on her knee. "We'll get her, I swear." Tani folded the spyglass and looked at Ron. "We split up. You take the fence walker and the smoker. I'll handle the 2 at the post." "And me?" Hannah asked. Ron turned to her, his eyes soft but stern. "You stay behind this ravine until you hear 3 whistles. That means the guards are down and it's safe to move in." Her throat tightened. "And if I hear gunshots?" Ron looked away for a moment, then back at her. "Then you stay put no matter what." Tani mounted again. "Remember," he said, "Sloane's men shoot first. Talk never saved any of them." They parted silently, Ron leading Hannah to a small hollow tucked between 2 massive pines. "You stay here," Ron said. "I'll whistle when it's time." Hannah grabbed his hand before he turned away. "Ron." He looked down at her. She swallowed hard. "If anything happens to you." "It won't," he said softly. But the flicker in his eyes betrayed that even he wasn't sure. She didn't let go of his hand. Not immediately. not until she felt him gently pull away, not coldly, but with a promise in the gesture. Then Ron slipped into the darkness like he'd been born from it. Hannah sank to the forest floor, back pressed against a pine trunk, heart thundering. Tani disappeared the other direction, silent despite his age. Minutes stretched into cruel, endless things. A twig snapped. A muffled curse floated on the wind. Hannah held her breath, nails digging into her palms. Then, one whistle. Her pulse leapt. Silence. A scuffle. Second whistle. Tears brimmed in her eyes. A faint thud, like a body hitting dirt. Third whistle. Hannah's hands flew to her mouth as relief crashed through her. It was time. She stood, trembling, but unbroken, and began to run toward the only thing that mattered in her world. Her daughter. Hannah's legs burned as she sprinted through the shadowed trees, branches clawing at her coat. Every instinct screamed caution, but the thought of Lily kept her moving. She didn't hear anything over the rhythm of her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Every step brought her closer to the shed, the distant lanterns now glowing like distant stars. Finally, she reached the perimeter. Her breath caught. The shed loomed before her, more menacing in the moonlight than she had imagined. Its wooden walls were rough and splintered. The windows were nothing more than iron bars, the faintest glimmer of light filtering through. A single door, heavy and padlocked, guarded the little world inside where her daughter was trapped. Hannah crouched behind a bush, her hands trembling. She scanned the yard. It was empty, for now. The guards Ron and Tani had targeted were gone. She had no time to think. The lock was rusted but thick. Kneeling, she searched for a rock. Her fingers found one, jagged and solid. She swung with all her strength. The padlock screamed as it bent and twisted, finally giving way with a sharp crack. Inside, the shed smelled faintly of hay and dust, mixed with the sour tang of fear. Lily's small sobs echoed in the darkness, sending a shiver down Hannah's spine. "Mommy?" The tiny voice froze Hannah in place. Hannah dropped to her knees, the world narrowing down to that single moment. "Lily," she whispered, rushing forward. Her arms enveloped her daughter, pulling her close. The little girl buried her face in her mother's shoulder, shivering with both cold and relief. "It's okay, sweetie. You're safe now," Hannah whispered, stroking Lily's hair. But even as they embraced, the sound of footsteps grew near. Hannah's eyes darted toward the door. A shadow moved across the threshold. Her chest tightened. "Mommy?" Lily clutched her hand tightly, eyes wide. Hannah's mind raced. There was no time to think. She gently lifted Lily into her arms, holding her close. They slipped through a narrow gap between the shed and the fence, moving silently as the figure approached. Tani appeared from the darkness, his weathered face breaking into a rare grin. "Took you long enough," he said in a low voice. Hannah exhaled, relief flooding through her. "I was afraid." "You're safe now. That's all that matters," Tani said. Ron's already cleared the rest of the yard. From the edge of the field, a shot rang out. A warning shot, perhaps, or a final attempt at resistance. Hannah's pulse jumped, but Lily only clutched her tighter. Ron emerged from the shadows, breathing hard, a faint smile breaking through his stoic face. "You found her," he said simply. "Yes," Hannah replied, tears streaming freely. "She's safe." Ron nodded, but his eyes scanned the darkness, alert. "We still need to get out of here." Tani led the way, moving like a shadow across the field. Hannah held Lily, guiding her feet carefully over the uneven ground. The horses waited at the edge of the woods, silent and patient. As they mounted, Lily's head rested against Hannah's shoulder, finally quiet. The ride back through the forest felt longer than the ride in, but now the fear was tinged with hope. Every rustle of leaves, every distant animal call felt like a reminder that they were alive, together. Hours later, the first light of dawn broke through the horizon, painting the forest in hues of soft pink and gold. They slowed, the horses trotting along a narrow path back toward safety. Lily stirred in Hannah's arms, blinking at the gentle morning light. "Mommy," she whispered sleepily. Hannah pressed a kiss to her daughter's forehead. "I've got you, Lily. Always." Ron and Tani rode beside them, silent but vigilant. The world seemed new, washed in the pale light of a new day, and yet every heartbeat reminded them of what had passed: the fear, the struggle, the desperate hope. As they neared the edge of the forest, the first hints of the town appeared in the distance. Families beginning their mornings, unaware of the drama that had unfolded just miles away. Hannah's heart swelled with gratitude. They had faced darkness and danger, but they had come through it together. And in that moment, holding her daughter close, Hannah realized the strength of love, a force that could drive her through fear, through uncertainty, and even through the night itself. Tani nudged his horse forward, breaking the quiet reverie. "You did good, all of you. Tonight, you've earned a place in your own story." Hannah laughed softly, a sound full of relief and wonder. Lily yawned and nuzzled closer, already feeling safe in her mother's arms. Ron gave a small smile, the kind that speaks of unspoken promises and quiet pride. The road ahead was still long. There were questions to answer, wounds to heal, and life to rebuild. But for now, in the warmth of the rising sun, they had each other. And that, Hannah knew, was enough. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to hope. The ride back from the forest felt surreal. The morning sun stretched long shadows across the countryside, painting the fields in gold and green. Hannah held Lily close, feeling the warmth of her daughter's small body against her chest, a steady heartbeat beneath her own. For the first time in weeks, fear wasn't the only emotion she felt. There was relief, gratitude, and a soft, lingering hope that maybe, just maybe, life could return to something resembling normal. As they approached the outskirts of the town, familiar sights greeted them: the bakery with smoke curling from its chimney, the corner store, the park where children played. It was ordinary, yet to Hannah it seemed miraculous. The world had kept turning, untouched by the chaos they had endured. "You're home, Lily," Hannah whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. Lily blinked sleepily, a small smile forming on her lips. "We're home." Ron and Tani stayed a few paces behind, watching with quiet satisfaction. Ron's eyes, always vigilant, softened as he saw the reunion, while Tani gave a small nod, the closest thing to praise he ever offered. Hannah guided Lily down the familiar streets, their steps slow, savoring each moment. It wasn't just a return to a place. It was a reclaiming of safety, a step back into a life that had seemed lost forever. Neighbors paused, curious at first, then recognizing Hannah and Lily. Gasps of surprise turned to applause and cheers. Children ran forward, wrapping Lily in cautious hugs, while the adults clapped Hannah on the back. Hannah felt a lump in her throat, unable to find the words. She simply smiled, tears spilling freely. For the first time, she allowed herself to acknowledge the depth of what had happened. The terror, the nights spent awake imagining her daughter in danger, the loneliness of worry. And now, the relief that it had all ended. They reached their small home, humble but warm. Hannah opened the door to the familiar scent of home-cooked meals and old books. She felt a strange mix of nostalgia and gratitude. Lily ran ahead to explore, her laughter ringing through the rooms, a sound Hannah had feared she'd never hear again. "Mommy, look!" Lily shouted, holding up a picture she had drawn in the week she'd been away. A small sun rising over a field, a horse standing beside it. "That's us." Hannah knelt, taking her daughter's hands in hers. "It is, baby. It really is." She hugged Lily tightly, feeling every ounce of fear and love she had bottled up over the past weeks pour out. Evenings were quieter, yet filled with healing. Hannah and Lily sat by the fireplace, sharing stories of small adventures, recounting moments from the days they had been apart. Ron and Tani visited often, checking in, but they gradually gave Hannah space to rebuild her own life. In the presence of the people who had risked so much for her daughter, she felt a new sense of strength take root. One afternoon, the town organized a small celebration in honor of Lily's safe return. Banners were strung across the main square, music floated through the air, and neighbors brought food and flowers. Hannah watched from the edge, holding Lily's hand, as the little girl waved shyly to the crowd. The community had rallied without even knowing the full story, proving that even in small, quiet towns, love and compassion could conquer fear. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in pink and amber, Hannah and Lily walked home together. Their shadows stretched long across the cobblestones, intertwined and inseparable. "Mommy," Lily whispered, "I was scared, but I knew you'd find me." Hannah's throat tightened. "I promised I'd always find you, Lily, and I always will." She kissed the top of her daughter's head. That night, as Lily slept peacefully in her own bed, Hannah sat by the window, looking out at the starlit sky. She thought of the forest, the shed, the danger, and the courage it had taken to reach this moment. But most of all, she thought of hope. Fragile, yet enduring, like a tiny flame that refused to go out. She realized that their story wasn't just about survival. It was about connection, love, and the small miracles that stitched life back together after the darkness. Every tear, every fear, every sleepless night had led them here, to the warmth of home, to the joy of reunion, and to the quiet understanding that love could heal even the deepest wounds. As dawn approached, Hannah finally allowed herself to rest, feeling the weight of fear lift from her shoulders. Life wasn't perfect. They had scars, questions, and challenges ahead, but they had each other. And sometimes, that was enough to make the world feel whole again. The weeks that followed Lily's return were gentle and full of quiet transformation. Hannah found herself waking each morning to sunlight spilling through the curtains and the sound of Lily's cheerful humming as she prepared for the day. It was ordinary, yet extraordinary. The kind of ordinary life she had once taken for granted. Each day felt like a page turning in a book that promised hope, love, and belonging. Hannah and Lily began exploring new hobbies together. On sunny mornings, they wandered through fields of wildflowers, gathering blooms to place in jars at home. They baked bread, laughed at kitchen mishaps, and shared stories as if weaving their days into a patchwork quilt of memories. The trauma of the past weeks didn't vanish overnight, but with each smile, each shared laugh, it became less of a shadow and more of a reminder of the strength they carried. Ron and Tani became regular visitors, their presence a quiet anchor in the ebb and flow of life. Ron, who had always been a man of few words, surprised Hannah with little notes and tokens: a freshly baked loaf of bread, a small wooden horse Lily could play with, a sketch of the forest that had once held fear but now held courage. Tani, who rarely smiled openly, began laughing at Lily's antics and teasing her gently about her boundless energy. These connections, once distant and professional, became heartfelt friendships, forming a safety net around Hannah and her daughter. One afternoon, Hannah took Lily to the library. The town's modest building smelled of old books and polished wood. Sunlight fell across shelves, illuminating the dust motes that danced lazily in the air. Lily ran ahead, her laughter echoing, and pulled a picture book from the shelf. Hannah sat beside her, watching her daughter's eyes sparkle as she turned each page. "Mommy, look at this," Lily whispered. "They have stories about brave girls." Hannah smiled, her heart swelling. "And you're one of them," she said softly, brushing Lily's hair behind her ear. Lily beamed, a blush rising to her cheeks. Evenings became special again. Hannah would sit on the porch, sipping tea while Lily recounted the day's adventures. Sometimes they would talk about the past, about the fear, about the courage it took to survive. Other times, they simply sat in comfortable silence, holding hands, knowing that presence alone was enough to heal. The town, too, began embracing the change. Neighbors offered small gestures of kindness, a bouquet of flowers, a freshly baked pie, or simply a warm smile as they passed on the street. Hannah felt gratitude bloom in her chest. In the face of fear, the town had given her hope. In the face of despair, Lily's bravery had given them all a reminder of resilience. One chilly evening, Hannah found herself telling Lily a story by the fireplace. "Do you remember when we were lost in the forest?" she asked. Lily nodded, her eyes wide. "It felt scary, but we kept believing in each other. And now, look at us. We're home." Lily hugged her mother tightly. "I'm never leaving your side again," she said with conviction. Hannah's eyes glistened. "And I'll never leave yours," she whispered. In that moment, she realized that home wasn't just a place. It was a feeling, a bond, a promise that even the darkest moments could be transformed into light with love and courage. The days began to stretch into months, and life gained a rhythm again. Hannah started working at the local community center, teaching art to children. She discovered joy in guiding young imaginations, watching them create worlds out of paint and paper, just as she had helped Lily reclaim her own world of safety and wonder. Lily, in turn, began attending school with a renewed confidence, her laughter carrying across the playground, a sound that reminded Hannah that innocence and joy could endure even after the storm. One sunny afternoon, the family, Hannah, Lily, Ron, and Tawny, sat beneath a giant oak tree in the park. They shared a simple picnic, laughing over spilled juice and chasing a mischievous squirrel. Hannah looked at Lily, then at Ron and Tawny, and felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. These bonds, forged in fear and strengthened in kindness, had become the pillars of her new life. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, Hannah whispered a quiet promise to herself. "No matter what comes, we will face it together. Love will always guide us home." Lily rested her head on her mother's shoulder, and for the first time, Hannah felt fully at peace. The past no longer haunting, the future no longer uncertain. Life had returned to them, but richer than before, filled with love, laughter, and bonds that could not be broken. And as the first stars appeared in the evening sky, Hannah knew their story was far from over. It was just beginning, a story of resilience, hope, and the unshakable power of family and friendship. The following spring arrived like a gentle promise. Flowers bloomed in every corner of the town, and the air was alive with the scent of renewal. Hannah woke one morning to Lily tugging at her hand, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Mommy, come outside. Look." They stepped onto the porch to see the small garden they had planted together fully alive. Sunflowers stood tall, their golden heads swaying in the breeze, while tulips and daisies painted the earth with color. It was more than a garden. It was a symbol of growth, resilience, and the life they had nurtured back into being. That morning, as the sun climbed higher, Ron arrived at their door with a small envelope. "Hannah, this came for you," he said, handing it over with a rare smile. Inside was a letter from a local council program offering support for rebuilding her home, along with a grant to start a small business. Hannah's heart swelled with gratitude. The town hadn't just offered sympathy, it had given her the tools to create a secure, joyful future for her and Lily. Weeks later, with help from friends and neighbors, Hannah's house was fully restored. It was warm and inviting, filled with sunlight and laughter, every corner echoing the promise of safety and happiness. Lily had a room painted in soft pastels, filled with books, toys, and little treasures from their adventures. Hannah often caught herself pausing in the doorway, taking in the simple beauty of a home rebuilt not just with walls, but with love. One afternoon, as they settled into the comfort of their renewed life, Hannah received a call from a local newspaper. They wanted to feature her story, not as a tale of fear and misfortune, but as one of courage, resilience, and the healing power of community. At first, she hesitated, unsure if she wanted her story in the public eye. But seeing Lily's eager nod and bright smile, she agreed. Maybe this can help others find hope, she said. The article was published on a sunny Saturday. That morning, neighbors stopped by to congratulate them, offering freshly baked bread, flowers, and warm hugs. The story inspired people far and wide, drawing attention not only to Hannah and Lily's journey, but to the strength that could emerge when love, courage, and community joined together. As summer approached, Hannah took Lily to the edge of the forest, not the one that had once been a place of fear, but the same forest now transformed in her eyes. Sunlight filtered through the trees, casting dappled patterns on the ground. Lily ran ahead, her laughter ringing like music, fearless and free. Hannah followed slowly, savoring every moment. At a small clearing, they found a patch of wildflowers untouched by time. Lily knelt down, picking a bouquet and handing it to her mother. "For you, Mommy," she said, "for all the times you kept me safe." Hannah knelt beside her, embracing her daughter tightly. "And thank you for giving me courage too," she whispered. That evening, they invited Ron and Tani for a small celebration. They gathered around a table laden with food, laughter filling the air. Stories were shared, jokes exchanged, and moments of quiet reflection cherished. In those simple moments, Hannah realized that the people, the love, the community, was the true treasure they had been searching for all along. As the stars appeared in the night sky, Lily yawned and leaned against her mother. "Mommy, I love our life," she murmured. Hannah kissed her forehead, her heart full. "And I love you, Lily, more than anything." In the warmth of their home, surrounded by the people who had become family, Hannah understood the depth of what they had achieved. The journey had been long, fraught with fear and uncertainty, but it had led them here, to a life rich with joy, trust, and love. It was a life that had been hard-earned, yes, but one worth every tear and every moment of hope. Hannah tucked Lily into bed that night, lingering to watch her daughter sleep peacefully. The shadows of the past no longer held power, only the light of new beginnings remained. With a gentle smile, she whispered into the quiet room, "We are safe, we are home, and we will always have each other." Outside, the night was calm, filled with the soft chorus of crickets and the distant rustle of trees. Inside, laughter, love, and the quiet promise of forever filled every corner. Hannah and Lily had endured the storm, and now they stood together, hearts full, ready for all the tomorrows yet to come. It was not just an ending, it was a beginning of hope, of resilience, of unwavering love. And in that beginning, their hearts found a peace and happiness that would stay with them forever. If you enjoyed this story of hope, love, and new beginnings, please subscribe Help us reach 1,000 subscribers and be part of our growing community. Don't forget to leave a comment. Tell me which part touched your heart the most. Let's spread positivity and inspiration together.